Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Far away from the breathless talk of misbehaving TV presenters and attention-seeking reality stars and whining members of the royal family, something remarkable is happening in Ukraine right now. Russia's little neighbour, with an army half its size, was supposed to fall under the Kremlin's rule in 3 days. Every expert told us Ukraine would be pounded off the map. And for a while, that's how it looked. Russian troops surged across the border from 3 directions. Bombs pounded shelters for refugees, maternity hospitals, residential buildings. In town after town, Russian flags were hoisted up as symbols of a genocidal conquest. They turned Ukraine into a living hell. But a hell of a lot has changed. Ukrainians fought back against the Russians, facing tanks and tractors, repelling the invaders with now legendary bravery. Western arms poured in, and Putin's war machine is falling apart. We're now hearing a lot about the Ukrainian counter-offensive, and it's worth thinking about what that actually means. It means Ukraine is no longer just defending itself, pinned against the ropes, taking the blows. It's now ready to begin punching back. It's fighting. It's on the front foot, and it's ready to take back its country in the way that President Zelensky has always vowed it would.
We are not prepared to exchange or trade the territory of the independent state of Ukraine. We have no right for this. First of all, we are the government because this land belongs to Ukrainian people.
Ukraine has every right to fight for every inch of its territory. A lot of experts say there's no way this ends without them giving up swathes of their country to the Russians, to Putin's barbarians. But why should they? How would we respond if Russia did this here, to our country? Well, we know what we did when Adolf Hitler tried to do that. Don't we? Or have we forgotten? Do we not learn the lessons from history when dictators try and rampage their way through Europe, seizing democratic sovereign countries? Ukraine has to win this war, has to win it for freedom and for democracy, and we have to help them do it. And it has to win this war on its terms, not Vladimir Putin's. Today, another reminder of why a massive explosion destroyed a huge dam in southern Ukraine, unleashing a biblical flood that will cost more lives and even threatens a nuclear power plant. It looks a lot like another lunatic act from a terrorist state that's getting ever more desperate and dangerous, or fearful of the counter-offensive. The only way we stop things like this is by bringing an end to the war. And that, for us, for America, for the other allies, means that we support and back Zelensky and Ukraine to finish the job. Well, joining me now is Yuriy, who's advisor to Ukrainian Defence Minister, and by General Mark Kimmett, the former Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs. Well, welcome to both of you. Yuriy, if let me start with you. How crucial is this phase of the war that we're now entering with the much vaunted counter-offensive, and how damaging is this incident today with the dam?
Thank you, Piers. And I would like to start by expressing deep gratitude to the United Kingdom, to the British people, for the support that we have been receiving from your country since day one of this aggression. Your leaders have come to support us in person. We have received tanks, we have received ammunition, we have received multi-launch rocket systems from the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom have been the driving force behind the formation of the fighter jet coalition, so we are thankful for that. Now, as to your question, of course, we have been preparing for the next stages of our deoccupation campaign. For a long time, we have been receiving military support from our allies. And what is beginning to happen now, the front is beginning to move. Russians continue to suffer setbacks on the battlefield in some places which have become legendary by now, like the city of Bakhmut, which is entirely pulverized by the Russian artillery, but Russians are leaving from there as well, and we are advancing little by little. Faced with this lack of military success, what a terrorist regime, which is what it is, the Russian terrorist regime, what they're doing, they continue the campaign of terror. So they continue to terrorize Ukrainian cities with the massive missile strikes. Just last night, we had a massive missile strike, 35 cruise missiles. But fortunately, thanks to the air defense systems we have received from our partners, they've all been shot down. And at night, they have blown up the dam, which create the flooding. More than 80 villages and small towns are now underwater. The water levels have risen in some places up to 10 meters. We have no idea how many people this flood will take away, because we, of course, right now cannot access these territories, and we will have to wait till the water comes down. The reconstruction of the dam is impossible. It is damaged beyond repair. We have proof and evidence that the explosives have been taken there by the Russian terrorists, by these war criminals. And this is why we are calling now an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. And look, we are confident, we are aware that Russia, the terrorist state, has a seat on the Security Council, but still we think it is important for us to bring this issue to the attention of the international community, because one of the possible outcomes has been the threat to the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, the second largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Luckily for now, there is no immediate threat.
Okay, thank you for that. That was an extraordinary account of what's been going on. Thank you. I want to bring in General Kimmett. From a purely military point of view, General, where are we in this war? How prepared are the Ukrainians for this counter-offensive? And I guess the overriding question, can they win?
Well, first of all, it's remarkable how strong the character and the morale of the Ukrainian forces are. Everybody thought this would be over in a matter of weeks. It's now been 16 months. And in 16 months, now the great event to come is the counteroffensive that nobody would have ever anticipated. But one has to question if there is a sufficient amount of equipment that has been provided to the Ukrainian armies to achieve President Zelensky's war termination goals. And that's what we need to talk about, is what does win mean? If win means that all of the Russian forces are pushed out of both Ukraine and the land inside the Crimea that belongs to Ukraine, I don't think we provided enough equipment up to this point. But I do believe that there is sufficient capability for the Ukrainians to conduct a significant counteroffensive against the Russians that would, number one, prove to the Russian forces that they have been defeated, prove to the West that this is a good investment and we need to provide more and more equipment, and also put the Ukrainian forces in a position that perhaps not this counteroffensive, but a subsequent counteroffensive would get closer to President Zelensky's war termination goals. Otherwise, I would be afraid that the West would be pushing the Ukrainians to a premature set of negotiations, which would just turn this into a frozen conflict and reward Putin for his aggression.
Yuriy, when I was in Ukraine interviewing the President and the First Lady, I was struck by, when I spoke to ordinary people in the street, old, young, male, female, whoever I spoke to, the absolute unity of resolve that the President should not cede an inch of Ukrainian land. In fact, they wanted to go and get back Crimea and other parts of the country that have been taken by Vladimir Putin. What is your message now to Vladimir Putin? If he's watching this, what is your message to him and his military about that question? I mean, would Ukraine ever, do you think, cede an inch of land?
My message to the Russian military would be something that our president, Mr. Zelensky, has said so many times. Surrender or be destroyed. This is the only two possible outcomes for these war criminals. They are already degraded by the Ukrainian army. They are demoralized. We are seeing they're deserting the battlefield. By now we have killed more than 210,000 Russian soldiers on the battlefield, and the news spreads. And this is why we're seeing the beginnings of the civil war in Russia, all these movements, the partisans in the Belgorod region. So this is my message to the soldiers. To the terrorist number one, the leader of Kremlin, I would say, begin rehearsing your speech when you will be standing in the docks of an international war crimes tribunal, because this war criminal has already had one indictment issued against him. And after today, I think somewhere now, as we speak, another one is being written. So the leader of Kremlin and his clique, they will all stand trial. Now, as for Ukrainians, we will continue to fight, because we understand at the level of our DNA that this is a war of our survival. This is a historical chance for us to once and for all resolve this issue. Russia, this war has begun not in February 2022. It began not even in 2014, when Russia illegally annexed Crimea and started the war in the east of Ukraine. This is something that Russia, this genocidal maniac and monster, was trying to achieve for centuries: destroy the Ukrainian identity, destroy the Ukrainian culture, and destroy us as a nation. This will never happen. I'll give you my word for this.
General Kimmett, briefly, if you don't mind, but what is the importance of this war now to the rest of the world? Are people like China, Iran, other countries watching to see what happens here? Would a victory for Putin unleash just yet more hell around the globe from people like those countries who would feel emboldened, perhaps attack Taiwan and so on? How significant is this now?
I think you're exactly right. If they see aggression go rewarded, they have no reason to be deterred, no reason to stop. I think the first issue would be that, as you say, China would do an unprecedented attack into Taiwan. You'd see other dictators around the world revive their own personal aspirations for lands outside of their country. So, as the defense advisor said, we must show Putin that he will not be rewarded for this illegal aggression.
General, thank you very much indeed. And Yuriy, thank you both very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.